Hi everyone, and welcome to the channel. Let's talk about some awesome retro games. Having already discussed modern consoles like the Sega Saturn and Dreamcast, today we're going to take a trip down memory lane and revisit the NES, or to be more precise, 8-bit games. Today I'm reviewing the NES's direct competitor, or as it's also known, the Sega Master System. We are so incredibly used to games eating up massive chunks of our hard drives today, right? I mean, we're talking well over 100 gigabytes, rapidly moving toward the terabyte era. But what if your canvas was limited to just a tiny fraction of a single megabyte? How much game can you actually fit into a few kilobytes? To really wrap our heads around this, we have to look back at the severe hardware limitations that early 8-bit developers faced and trace one I like to call the kilobyte escalation arc. To kick off our arc, we've got to start at the absolute baseline, the very bottom floor of our memory ladder, 8. Just 8 kilobytes. To put that 8 kilobyte baseline into perspective, the smallest game we're looking at isn't even a standalone physical cartridge. There's this cool little game called Snail Maze. It's not an official game, but it was secretly hidden in the BIOS of the original American Master System 1 consoles. You couldn't just buy it at the store or anything. To even play it, you had to turn on the console without any cartridge in it and press a super secret button combo on the joystick. This tiny maze shows how creative developers could get with super old tech, way before we had things like downloadable updates. Let's move to and see how this builds. We are jumping up to 32 kilobytes. Now in this era, Sega introduced a really fascinating format known as Sega cards. Instead of those bulky standard cartridges, these were small, budget-friendly cards that slid right into a totally separate slot on the front of the console. With less memory baked in, they were specifically designed for low-income consumers who just wanted some more affordable gaming options. So jumping to 32 kilobytes bought developers some pretty surprising features. They managed to squeeze in beautiful motorcycle racing with full day, night, and desert cycles and hang on. They even pulled off early horror elements. We talking Dracula and Mummies and Ghost House, but Spy vs. Spy is the real standout here. It somehow managed to include split multiplayer map navigation and a final escape sequence, which was just wildly unusual for the 8 era. But you know, it's a real give and take. To make these games actually run, severe compromises had to be made. For instance, my hero only had one single level that looped endlessly, and most of these 32 kilobyte games featured just one music track that repeated over and over and over again. From those 32 kilobyte cards, the Sega Master System took a massive game-changing leap. It completely skipped the logical next step of 64 kilobytes and jumped straight to 128 kilobyte cartridges. This incredible doubling of capacity was made possible thanks to the invention of mappers, which finally allowed developers to flex some real creative muscle. With all this expanded memory, the Master System could finally go toe-to-toe with the massive juggernaut that was the NES. Take Ghostbusters, for example. Sega's version featured uniquely appealing graphics and far superior intro music compared to its NES counterpart. Meanwhile, Rambo First Blood Part 2 on the Master System utilized this really cool top-down, almost 3D-ish view for intense, movie-accurate jungle gun fights. Though admittedly, it did feature a pretty odd final boss. Now, what's genuinely fascinating about this era is the crazy creative sacrifices developers still had to make just to hit those 128 kilobyte limits. Take the game King's Quest. It featured complex quest gameplay, dynamic character interactions, and absolutely beautiful graphics for the time. But the catch? The developers essentially had to drop almost all in-game sound and music. Yep, you traverse this stunning 8-bit world in near total silence, simply because they needed every last single byte of memory just for the visuals in the story. But hey, the march of technology stops for literally no one. We next arrive at the 256 kilobyte generation of cartridges. This 256 kilobyte era was marked by some pretty wild inconsistencies. It was a real mixed bag. On one hand, you had brilliant innovations. Alex Kidd in Miracle World actually managed to include a super rare digitized voice between levels. Ninja Gaiden gave players a completely exclusive storyline with brand new bosses and cinematic intro cutscenes. And Predator 2 faithfully followed the actual movie plot. But on the other hand, you had some puzzling disappointments. Ariel the Little Mermaid boasted great intro music, but completely lacked cutscenes and forced players through these. Repetitive prison corridors. And while the first Terminator was entirely unique, Terminator 2 was basically just a downgraded port that completely cut the iconic motorcycle. Level. Eventually, the hardware pushed to what was supposed to be its absolute final peak, 512 kilobytes, half a megabyte. For developers in major markets, this was the ultimate hardware ceiling for the Master System. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer ambition of developers when given half a megabyte. Just look at the blockbusters they pumped out. In Desert Strike, you had free map flight in a 3D helicopter, rescuing hostages over land and ocean, and even battling submarines. Mortal Kombat 2 managed to retain impressive character intros, the big boss Shao Kahn, and yes, full gory fatalities. Aladdin became this 8-bit gem packed with massive cartoon-quality cutscenes and a multi-stage boss fight with Jafar. You could literally ride dragons in Golden Axe, fight a Triceratops in Jurassic Park, and seamlessly transform back and forth between a human and a giant in Hulk. It was a completely incredible swan song for the console. Which brings us to a major chronological turning point. By 1991, 16-bit consoles were absolutely taking the world by storm. The writing was on the wall for the 8-bit era. Consequently, developers in the US and Japan officially abandoned the Sega Master System. They simply stopped making games for it, and for all intents and purposes, the console essentially died in those major markets. So the crucial point is, what actually happens to a console after it is officially abandoned by its primary creators? For almost every other piece of hardware in gaming history, the story ends right there. It just fades into obscurity. But for the Sega Master System, this death was actually just a setup for an absolutely incredible plot twist. We call this the Brazilian plot twist. While the console vanished from store shelves in the US and Japan, it experienced massive, unprecedented sales and soaring popularity in Brazil. The idea just spread like wildfire there. It was so incredibly successful that Sega made a wildly rare exception in the gaming industry. They decided to continue officially supporting the 8-bit Master System exclusively for the South American market throughout the rest of the 1990s. Because the console survived and thrived in Brazil, developers there weren't constrained by the old rules. They completely shattered that 512 kilobyte ceiling and jumped to a shocking 800 kilobytes. This was an era of cartridge size entirely exclusive to the Brazilian market. Armed with 800 kilobytes of memory, Brazilian developers did the literal impossible by releasing an exclusive 8 version of Street Fighter II. And guys, this wasn't just some compromised watered-down port. This was a completely standalone game built from the ground up, featuring its own unique maps and its very own storyline. It was an unprecedented achievement for an 8-bit system. No way anyone saw that coming. But guess what? They still weren't done. The escalation arc had one final monumental peak to reach, the absolute ultimate hardware limit achieved by the Sega Master System, the 1 megabyte cartridge. Released in 1997, that's 12 years after the console first launched. A lifetime in tech years, these 1 megabyte titles were true 8-bit masterpieces, Virtual Fighter Animation offered this really unique blend of a fighting game and an interactive anime novel based on a popular Japanese show. Sonic Blast pushed 8-bit graphics to such staggering, unbelievable levels. It honestly felt like a generational leap. And then there was CTO do Pica-Pau Amarelo, a beautiful, completely original platformer created by Tic Toys, based directly on a really famous Brazilian children's TV series. These were the true, absolute limits of the console. They pushed it to the absolute max. When we look back over this entire 12-year evolution, the story is truly remarkable. I mean, we started in 1985 with a tiny 8 kilobyte maze hidden away in a BIOS. By 1986, we had 32 kilobyte budget cards. By 1989, 256 kilobytes gave us digitized voices. In 1991, hitting half a megabyte brought us 3D Flight and Mortal Kombat fatalities, just as the console officially died in the US. And yet, against all odds, by 1997, the Brazilian market pushed it to a jaw-dropping 1 megabyte to deliver interactive anime and stunning visual fidelity, which leaves us with a really fascinating final thought to ponder today. We just saw how severe hardware limitations forced developers to become incredibly ingenious. They squeezed absolute, undeniable magic out of a single megabyte of space. So when you look at the endless, near-infinite canvas available to game creators today, if constraints breed this much creativity, what limits are actually holding back today's terabyte-sized games? It really makes you wonder, is having no limits at all actually the biggest limitation of all? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this sparked your curiosity just as much as it did mine.